Amidst the sultan spray of ancient seas, where the horizon is both boundary and battle line, survival was not promised. In the belly of a medieval ship made of rope and rusted nails, hope was a thin thread indeed. Timber creaked underfoot, whispering. Secrets of storms endured, or waiting to be unleashed before the clash of steel and scream of arrows. It is a suffocating stench of rot, sweat, and sickness that squared off with the nerves of every sailor. The sea's surface mirrored chaos from above and below. The depths eagerly reached for those who faltered. Tonight we sailed these perilous waters. Music. Step back in time to a world where the ocean was both ally and adversary, a stage for bravery and tragedy. In this realm, medieval warships emerged as floating embodiment of audacity, crafted from sturdy oak and bound together by ropes spun from durable fibers. These vessels represented humanity's ambition, each nail driven with care, each timber cut with precision. Underneath, woolen sails caught the capricious winds, propelling these wooden behemoths across merciless seas. Each component whispered tales of force, failed, and nature challenged. Yet the sea remained a fickle and often unforgiving partner. These ships, both remarkable and fragile, navigated waves with timbers groaning, revealing their vulnerabilities. At the harshest times, as the hulls cut through waves and collided with foes, the creaking symphony of wood and rope underscored the perpetual tension between human craftsmanship and nature's power. Beneath the decks, where salt water mixed with rust, sailors prayed for the integrity of their vessel. Every voyage was a gamble, pitting the shipbuilder's skill against the ocean's moods, holding warriors, dreams, and a mantle of uncertainty. Picture standing on a deck alive with motion as waves battered the ship, each drop of water creeping into the build, a reminder of the ship's fragility. The ever-present leaks were a silent threat, a potential disaster waiting at every turn. The sea, with its unpredictable fury, lashed out tirelessly. A sudden wave could crush the feeble hope of wooden planks and iron nails, turning man and ship into an inseparable part of the ocean's vastness. This dance with death made every naval voyage a theater of human pride and nature's might. Casting off from the shore marked the start of a harrowing journey. On the open sea, winds spoke in a language of their own, conspiring with the tides to challenge even the most experienced seafarers. These breezes, often mercurial, dictated the ship's fate, manipulating the fragile balance the crew strove to maintain. Waves rose like menacing phantoms, crashing with gleeful malice, while sailors operated in vigilant shifts amid the omnipresent threats hidden beneath the surface. To sail these vessels demanded more than courage. Sailors accepted their role within the ship's framework, sharing cramped quarters with vermin, salt spray, and a lurking fear at each creak. Their hardened bodies drove the ship into battle, a testament to their resolve amidst longing for lives left ashore. Courage defined them, not by the absence of fear, but by their response to the sea's harsh hierarchy. Each ripple a reminder of their delicate mastery over their destiny. In naval warfare, the decision to ram another ship became a courageous calculus. The prow of the ship was a weapon of choice, thrusting not just into waves, but into potential annihilation. Crew members prepared themselves, calculating the risk, aware that their offensive could turn defensive in an instant. The clash of ships was a shock wave that reverberated through wood and bone, leaving both victorious and defeated ships precariously entwined in the sea's indifferent grasp. Survival on these waters required not just strength, but cunning, a blend of ancient knowledge and human instinct. A ship's crew relied on centuries of maritime wisdom, applying tactics sharpened by both victory and defeat. In these desperate conditions, innovation was born, not from intellect alone, but from a dance of survival instincts. Each maneuver a nod to mysterious forces beyond sight or understanding. Hope, a persistent, intangible force, sailed alongside. Dread. Every sailor embarked on their journey with dreams of glory, fired by visions of spoils and valor. Fear, however, shadowed them closely, a quiet companion in times of struggle. During storms that bent the ship to the sky's will, hope stood staunchly alongside fear, each tacking sail in command reinforcing their resolve. Facing the sea's challenges, courage was redefined, not as the absence of fear, but as the resilience to rise above it, steering confidently toward an uncertain horizon. This sea symphony enveloped the preparations for battle, a crescendo building as ships near one another. Tension charged the air as the ocean whispered its secrets, foretelling the clash to come. The initial impact of wood crumbling against wood heralded warfare, its raw, violent symphony surpassing any church chorus. Amidst the chaos of clashing steel and burning sails, the sea echoed its lament, rebelling against the intrusion into its domain. This was not pure noise, but a tactile experience woven through the salt-laden air with cries, arrows, and the crackle of flames, a visceral sonnet of struggle and survival. In this world, unseen dangers lurk beneath the sea's deceptive surface. Ghostly echoes whispered through the mist, transforming approaches from routine into perilous games of chance. Every strategy was vulnerable against these invisible forces. Swells and shifts challenging the best-laid plans. Sails unfurled with shared purpose. Crews leaned on unity and instincts to face nature's unknown threats, weaving skill into each decision and defying the ocean's hidden dangers. The legacy of courage and craftsmanship thrived in each nautical expedition. As ships returned victorious or succumbed to the deeps, they carried stories forged in the endless cycle of bravery and the harsh hand of fate. More than wood and iron, they were artifacts of humanity's bold strides and retreats, etching narratives across the ocean's vast surface. Each ship's journey embodied these tales, connecting past and present through acts of valor and vulnerability. This woven history of maritime valence resonates through time, echoing in the sea's eternal call. Amidst the daunting seascape of the Middle Ages, the scent of salt water was only the beginning. Ships constructed from untreated wood and bound with hemp constantly teetered on the edge of decay. Sea aders seeped into their wooden holes, leaving behind salty residues that gnawed at the timber, while the stench of wet wood melded with stagnant bilgeage water. Combined with the unwashed bodies of men who lived in these tight quarters for weeks, a faded cocoon enveloped these unwitting mariners. Yet, this wasn't merely about phylactery distress. It was a testament to human resilience and adaptation. Sailors became indifferent to this permanent fugdo as enemy ships approached. Even seasoned mariners faced the sharp thrust of burnt oil, gunpowder, and the inescapable scent of blood, profound reminders of looming doom. Washing was a rare luxury, even on solid ground. At sea, fresh water was too precious for anything other than drinking. As a result, hygiene remained an unattainable ideal. Unwashed bodies turned clammy with sweat, becoming a feast for lice and fleas. The clothes seafarers wore unraveled after countless layers of grime, becoming a tapestry of spilled ale and sweat. The garments chafed and captured the journey's misfortunes like a reluctant journal. Occasionally, a fortuitous gust of wind might briefly banish the stench, offering sailors fleeting relief before battle added its own bloody aromas to the mix. On the cusp of combat, preparations birthed a fresh cocktail of pungent smells. Barrels of pitch and tar sat ready alongside boiling cauldrons, each a defensive tool against enemy boarders. Men tasked with these odorous preparations bore their smell long after battle ceased. As rot festered below decks, sailors knew their supplies hosted hidden threats. Provisions decayed as salty meats and grains became gardens of rot. Rats scurred about and maggots squirmed in spoiled bread. Nature's relentless recycling. Yet hunger tolerated no delay, forcing men to consume spoiled meals despite their gagging palates. The men coped with humor, grim jokes muttering in the rank air, crafting camaraderie from shared adversity. Life aboard these vessels had another stark reality, the necessity of waste disposal. Crude lavatories, dubbed ahead, formed the grotesque part of the vessel's day-to-day. As sailors perched on these boards, they surrendered to nature in a synchrony of the grotesque, adding another layer to the ship's miasma. Yet practicality turned to tactic in battle. as human waste was flung at enemies, a crude weapon that mocked. The Gentile chivalry suited to the land. The sailor's garb woven from coarse wool trapped all manner of odorous souvenirs. Every stitch told its own tale of survival against relentless elements. Armor soaked with salt water and sweat bore lingering traces of past battles. The metal beneath their fingers retaining scents of old blood and iron, even when hastily maintained. With oils, the pungent bite clung to the sailors, reminding them of their shared identities as men bound to the mast. Atmosphere, however, was more than the sum of these ingredients. It infused meaning into every breath. Before fleets clashed, air shimmered with palpable tension. Fear got tangled in sweat, twisting into expectation. Fire's heat sharpening, the acrid smells of pitch added to looming battles. Fear, a constant companion, enveloped both ship and sailor, giving seawater a sinister tang. The threat of fiery projectiles dismantled the serene calm, blending reality into a living nightmare. In the chaotic ballet of battle, the smell of fresh blood soon joined the ship's electric symphony. The intimate proximity of death transformed human figures into mere bloody rags. Blood vapor rose ghost-like, mingling with iron and sweat on the slippery deck. Amidst this chaos, a haunting calm could follow as moments of deafening silence enveloped the unvoiced agony. Every sailor carried these echoes, every plank soaked with stories of courage and loss. A spectral narrative there to shape a living history. As battles concluded, the sour scent of defeat pervaded the remains of the battlefield. A collection of desperation's essence, bodies left to the sea's indifference. Burnt ships cloaked in decay. Even in victory, no sweeter odor emerged. Sailors bore fresh loss and heavy contemplation. The echoes of an altogether different kind of victory lingered, asking for a reckoning with its costly demands. The smell of past triumphs lingered like distant echoes across endless horizons, a memory to be carried into tomorrow. Finally, when docking at port, sailors experienced the vivid contrast of land's gentler aromas. A humble symphony compared to the raw sea. The scent of fresh bread and herbs struck like wonder to nostrils still haunted by maritime memories. Every inhalation of homely wood smoke grounded them, while battle's ghosts faded but were never fully lost. Each sailor's breath retained hints of his travels, the salty caress of the sea, ever the faithful companion to man's yearning for adventure, and the deep truth of the sea's infinite embrace. Imagine stepping onto a medieval warship, your breath captured by the oppressive smell of salt and human sweat. The deck vibrates under the weight of warriors, restless in their readiness for battle, their armors clinking softly. You're squeezed into a wooden beast, a creaking monster that feels less like a ship and more like a cramped prison waiting to test your endurance. Each step reminds you of potential chaos, a single shift or crack-spelling disaster. You cast your eyes upwards, half expecting the terrifying sight of a spar crashing down, pinning you under its merciless weight. A grim omen of a battle that hasn't yet begun. Beneath the deck, among the stored supplies and clustered men, whispers of prayers merge with the commanding bark of orders. Down here, under the heavy beams, you sense the quiet menace of your own ship, its cracks, its shifting joints, a danger lurking above before even meeting the enemy. You breathe in the damp, faded scent mingling with salted provisions. A daily reminder that your end could come not from enemy blades, but from the ship's own cruel architecture. These timbers, unforgiving strangers, could silently claim you with a collapse. A death nail masked in the cacophony of war preparations. Your vessel engages the enemy. A well-rehearsed dance that echoes with the sound of clashing ships. A waltz of death on the waves. The hull beneath your feet vibrates with each sickening impact. Above, warriors are thrown against the inertia of colliding ships. Every bone-rattling crash a reminder of the stakes. This ramming, a brutal tactic, unleashes chaos within the ship's gut. Warriors are tossed like playthings across the deck, tangled with their own gear, a grotesque mishmash of limbs and weaponry. Caught between the cons of deck, Soldiers jostle for footing, their paths a treacherous maze. The wood groans ominously as men grapple with their sense of balance. Falling can mean being buried under debris, a misfortune as fatal as any sword or spear. Info: a fall on deck lands you not just bruised, but trapped like an animal in those frantic moments, pinned beneath a tide of fellow soldiers, or fell burgeon. Here amidst the groans of wooden man, you grasp that battle is as much fight with architecture as with foes. A sharp instinctual awareness tells you that each misstep caught ruin on these decks, where stability feels more illusion than fact. The seasoned among you have learned to read the ship's shift, sense its mood, avoid its treacherous traps. Still, warfare's chaos mocks such calculations, turning even the sure-footed into victims of momentum. You find yourself flattened beneath a swarm of bodies. A breathless moment of stark realization that your opponent may well be the weight of fear itself. The snaking rigging overhead. Reliable lines for navigation morph into stealthy threats. A snap mast or loosened rope in battle is a death sentence, pinning men beneath their heavy coils. An ironic liberation delivered cruel by fate. A sailor. Strangled unceremoniously by the harness meant to secure him lies another nameless casualty, claimed swiftly by the melee. Amidst fallen men and fickle ropes, the deck transforms into a treacherous arena where friends, not foes, become unwitting executioners. Some in the fray do not fall victim on deck, but are instead flung into the sea's icy embrace. The battle denying them even the chance to fight. Water closes over them, armor converting savior to saboteur, a one-way ticket to the ocean's cold depths. The moment they hit the churning waves, hopes of survival sink faster than they can fathom. Wrapped in the brutal twist of irony that fighters fearlessly met the ocean's unyielding grasp. On board, amid tight confines and frantic movements, the throng moves as one panicked, swarming entity. Friends shove and press, every misstep teeming with danger. You stumble, perhaps pushed by an ally's frantic retreat or misjudged lurch. In that tangled blitz, survival tests your ability to dance with the melee, to fend off not just foes, but the boots and elbows of those around you. The crisis of trampling being crushed beneath comrades in the ebb and flow of battle might befall you in these chaotic exchanges. Their panicked flight knows little restraint, and underfoot lies the grim testament to frantic urgency. Your existence reduced to a pulpy reminder. Lost beneath advancing feet, the fight continues. Its frenzy indifferent to your quiet end amidst the madness. Death's true gravity comes not from the clash of blades, but the ship's own machinations. Its wooden hull, supposed protector, embraces you, crushes beneath its collapse. Decks groan under the burden of men at war, and in moments, faithful refuge turns deadly. Cast between wooden jaws and enveloped by the sea, you comprehend the ship's dispassionate cruelty. A somber bond between man and vessel, sealed in calamity. As water encroaches, the gloomy truth surfaces. Your wooden cage is now a quiet, sinking crypt. The finality encircles you like the steady lull of the tide. Panic sojourners to a fatalistic calm. The once ceaseless disarray dissolving into marine silence. The anxious jostle of your erstwhile companions fades into the abyss. Your fates entwined. In a maritime requiem, a profound farewell from the world, immersed in history's watery veil. Music. In the chaotic theater of medieval naval warfare, the sky turned into a weapon all its own. As ships drew close, the air was alive with the wear of arrows. These projectiles arched gracefully from platforms high on masts or from nimble archers perched in crows' nests. They weren't just sticks with feathers. They were fearsome pieces of engineering for their time. The long bow, a quintessential tool of the medieval arsenal, had the power to punch through armor from staggering distances. Longbow men trained from childhood to wield these mighty weapons with precision, sending arrows to darken the skies and renaff on deck before the enemy was even visible to the eye. But these weren't ordinary arrows. The arrowheads were often barbed, designed to rip through flesh. A federal offense against any thought of easy removal. Fire arrows took the threat up a notch. Their tips bound with oil-soaked rags ignited. Just before launch, each fiery projectile was a harbinger of chaos. A single flaming arrow could light up a sail, making it almost impossible to control the flames, planting fear into the hearts of sailors who prayed it wouldn't land on their backs. The sky raining death onto the blood-stained decks below captured the brutal artistry of the era's projectile warfare. Fire terrified people back then, and flaming arrows were purpose-built to play on that primal fear. They weren't just arrows, but incendiary messages of impending doom. A volley of these orange-red comets could turn a ship into a blazing inferno. The sound of them hurtling through the air struck men with raw terror as flames licked at sails and skittering feet scrambled to smother them. The craftsmanship was deadly and deliberate, with arrows thickly wrapped and soaked in tar or pitch, notorious for burning with ferocious persistence. In the resulting bedlam, any efforts to douse fires typically failed, spreading the hot tar even further instead. The air thickened with the potent smell of burning wood, singed hair and flesh, painting an infernal scene from which escape seemed impossible. Medieval innovation didn't stop there. Among the more bizarre, deadly tools were boiling pitch and pots of sand. Boiling pitch was smoldering hot tar unleashed onto assailants trying to board. This gruesome liquid didn't just burn. It stuck, penetrating through layers of armor and skin, marking its victim for death. Pots of sand, heated until red-hot, carried their own sinister menace. They flowed into every crack in armor, causing searing injuries that transformed soldiers' armor into insufferable prisons. The creativity in such medieval warfare was only limited by imagination, making you rethink splashing sand at the beach. In the middle of all this was the ever-present challenge of identifying foes through the literal fog of battle, ships obscured by smoke, ever-changing light, and thick sea haze turned visible enemies back into shadowy phantoms. Navigational strategies relied heavily on cunning and ears that could detect an enemy by sound rather than inklings of mercy surface. Sometimes survival dictated a prisoner was more useful alive, and moments arose when chivalrous codes meant extended hands offering fleeting reprieves. In the brutal present, however, mercy was more whim than necessity, a rare choice that swam amidst relentless survival instincts. Yet sparks of humanity flickered among foes in shared glances. A fleeting connection in the eye of chaos where mercy or cruelty entwined as two ancient partners. Each boarding left behind grim testimonies. The fallen would remain etched in the memory of the living. Faces now void of warmth offered silent farewells across decks. Now still, in spite of crew deficiency, demanding some bodies met the depths. Unceremoniously, others lingered until ransomed or recollected, symbols of the costly dance. Survivors bore witness to shared struggles engraved in each face. Vessels of memory shaping stories resonant with both warning and remembrance. When combat's roar finally abated, those surviving inhaled the aching silence. Broken-voiced survivors gazed at survivors and lost alike, bonded not by an enemy's sword, but by the trials of those who dared journey the pitiless seas. Every scar signified victory. Each breath drawn a defiance against fate's unresolved whims. These narratives, woven with threads of courage and trepidation, stood both as burdens and as triumphant legacies anchoring in the sea's eternal, unfathomable depths. On the medieval battlefield at sea, fire was an insidious weapon. Take Greek fire, for example, a concoction from the Byzantine Empire that could ignite water itself, sending streams of flames across enemy decks. The scene was one of terror. Sailors scrambled to extinguish fires with water only to find it futile. The air was thick with the acrid tang of burning wood and flesh as the blazing shadows of this ancient weapon engulfed ships, leaving chaos in their wake. The mere sight of a vessel armed with Greek fire would sow panic before a battle even began. Its psychological impact rivaled its physical devastation. Witnessing fellow sailors consumed by flames was a surefire way to break morale faster than any sword. This element of surprise often tipped the scales of battle, leaving armies in disarray, unable to replicate this secret weapon's ferocity. The Byzantines guarded their fire formula as zealously as any treasure, ensuring their foes never knew when this unpredictable inferno might strike. Meanwhile, the birth of the fire ship was a testament to tactical audacity and cunning. Old ships, termed vessels of destruction, were packed with oils and set ablaze, drifting menacingly towards enemy lines. Steered by courageous crews who leapt to safety at the last moment, these ships transformed into fiery comets bent on creating havoc. Despite their effectiveness, they were risky. Wind shifts or enemy interceptions could backfire catastrophically. But when they succeeded, the resultant chain reactions of flames were devastating, as desperate sailors launched themselves into the water to escape the burning hell. Not to be outdone, medieval warriors wielded the oil pot, an incendiary weapon, akin to a medieval grenade. These clay or metal pots filled with oil and resins created a terrifying spectacle upon impact. They shattered on deck in a scattering flames in a dance that forced even the bravest to retreat. The simplicity of these pots, married with their devastating effects, revolutionized medieval warfare. They democratized firepower, allowing soldiers to throw destruction by hand and turning sea skirmishes into blazing infernos of confusion and terror. During the siege of Byzantium, the night sky was lit by the surreal glow of burning arrows and firepots. This siege highlighted fire's impact on naval warfare, transforming stealthy assaults into illuminated dramas that etched memories as vivid as the searing flames into the minds of combatants. Despite the overwhelming firepower, the resilience of defenders and attackers alike spawned innovations like soaked blankets and sandbags, underscoring humanity's ingenuity in the face of annihilation. Yet, medieval ships were themselves floating. Tinder boxes made watertight with flammable tar and loaded with supplies like hemp and wood. They were ready to ignite with the slightest spark. Sailors were keenly aware of their vessel's combustible nature, understanding that every piece of rigging and every inch of hull was potential kindling. Vigilance during battles was paramount. The crew's quick thinking turned many potential disasters into legends. With fire management becoming as integral to seamanship as navigation, fire also wielded its power as a psychological weapon, instilling nightmares in those who survived its wrath. Sailors lived haunted by visions of comrades aflame, the anticipation of fiery death looming over every battle. This psychological terror fractured morale, proving more powerful than swords. Survivors bore scars not only on their skin, but also in their minds, reminders of battles with elements as much as with human foes. This paradox, fire raging on water, was a stark, unsettling reality. Combustible alchemy often overpowered nature's laws, leaving sailors to battle with a defiant enemy that refused to extinguish. The juxtaposition of its chaos against water's calm highlighted the eternal struggle of elements, a harsh reminder of maritime life's unpredictable challenges. For those casting themselves into the sea to escape flames, the water could be both salvation and executioner. Despite the destruction fire wrought, medieval mariners devised ingenious countermeasures. Ships evolved, and alongside them defensive strategies emerged. Crews trained in firefighting tactics as rigorously as they did in combat. When fires broke out, men stood ready with soaked barriers and sand-filled septive embrace. Even in this horrendous momentum, sight depicting the frantic, disorganized scrambling of ships latched onto one another amid tumbling masts and shouting men. War sounds were an orchestra of horror. It wasn't just the arrows and the clanging of swords that played the deadly symphony. It was the human cries, a motley collection of bellowed orders, and the plaintive wails of the wounded. The snapping of timbers cutting through waves served as an eerie prelude, and the release of arrows became a macabre melody recognized by every sailor who danced this perilous engagement. Imagine standing on deck, staring at archers elevated. In their nests, feeling detached and scarily calm while the chaos unfolds below. It was a peculiar vantage point, turning men to mere silhouettes. Just another set of targets, silhouetted against a fiery backdrop. Sailors below didn't see or feel this detachment. For them, fear was accompanied by the psychological strain of arrows dropping from a sky cloaked in night. No shield or armor could fend off such invasive threats, forcing them to watch the heavens. As much as the approaching enemies. When vessels merged, a tactical siege occurred. A cacophony of chaos ensued. Wind and oars brought deafening crescendos as ships collided, clashing wood and bursting tempers, engaging them in brutal close quarter. Battle. Survival depended on not just the strength of one's sword arm, but the strength of one's heart. Skilled mariners understood chaos wasn't only the absence of order, it was strategy. The many acting as one, a wave of force hard to turn aside in its wraith-like grasp. Fear, that tyrannical sovereign sown into battles, wasn't just in the missiles or blades. It was felt acutely in nerve endings, creating a unique unity among those who've tasted the maelstrom of combat. Here, memories weren't stories of dust and number. They were burnt into each survivor, pieced together as tales shared by warriors who knew the valor of terror unshackled within brotherly grips. Stories spoken under taverns' amber lights echoing. The horrors in the human spirit that somehow unbelievably endured in the charged stillness before a medieval naval boarding. Every heartbeat seemed louder than the groaning timbers beneath warriors' feet. The ship's near contact, and the air. Quiver was something more profound than fear. It was a raw anticipation that gripped each man by his gut, where even seasoned fighters exchanged looks that betrayed the ghosts of past battles. In those dread-fueled moments, men clutched weapons with white-knuckle resolve, bracing against the inevitability of what lay ahead. Here survival transcended skill. It was a whispered bargain with fate as fickle as the sea itself. As the ships touched and ropes were hurled, that quiet urgency erupted into unrestrained chaos, where the cries of war rent the skies, the air thickened with smoke and the clang of swords. Each heartbeat lost between life's fleeting threads, and the gruesome familiarity of battle. Once the first ship breached another, sailors morphed into frenzied ravens, claws at the ready, leaping horribly into the breach. A desperate surge over gangplanks, a scramble up makeshift ladders, and men launched themselves directly onto enemy decks. The environment transformed into a churning melee where identities blurred, friends and foes indistinct amidst the frenetic warfare. Every step was perilous on the slick, blood-smeared boards that pitched and heat beneath them. Combat instincts took charge, each movement a reflex honed through countless trials. Training was their only synchrony amid the pandemonium, a primal symphony playing out against the ship's lurching sway. Commands vanished in the den, replaced by wordless shouts and frantic gestures. Each man caught in his own solitary battle, against the familiar terror of survival and the unknown horror of an unpredictable foe. When sailors collided amid boarding scuffles, all sophistication was discarded. It was sheer brute force, and no prescriptive discipline guided the exchanges. Weapons vary from swords and axes to anything in hand-turned vicious instruments. In that intimate gore, warriors fought close enough to feel, smell, even their opponent's desperation. The deck's unpredictability demanded every thrust serve. A dual purpose, attack and steady oneself. Encompassed by the agonizing cries of the wounded, the scent of sweat and iron, visceral combat bombarded every sense, while exhaustion clawed at their resolve. Bodies lay as obstacles and makeshift shields. Lifeless participants now expumed from combat, but intrinsic to its reckless dance. At this edge of mortality, survival instincts drove warriors. Each grimacing breath was a testament to life clinging desperately to its fragile hold. Amidst this raw conflict, sailors wielded whatever weapons they could muster. A sword and axe, a well-aimed dagger, even a loose piece of ship's rigging became fatal in desperate hands. Every attack was a risk, a gamble with each stroke, aiming between a foe's defenses and an ally's fleeting protection. Sailors wielded belaying pins and marlin spikes, tools of maritime life reimagined into implements of grim necessity. The disparity of weaponry mirrored the chaos, a reminder of survival's unrestrained adaptability, an assurance that life afforded no luxury save audacity. On such wavering ground, the very deck demanded as much attention as the opponents. Spattered with water and blood, the surfaces beneath were treacherous, challenging every assumption. Sailors contended against their environment as much as each adversary, with every lurch dictating a new perilous spin to their unpredictable dance. An unwary misstep could mean a drastic fall, or worse, a plunge into depths none wished to court. This fragile and fluctuating stage forced adaptability from all combatants, demanding awareness beyond mere martial skill. Perhaps the greatest terror in all this madness was slipping between ships. These deceitful gaps, shifting and sometimes invisible, proved fatal. With a misplaced step or a fateful push, the sea beckoned with cold indifference. Deck to sea, with each heavy flourish of waves that silenced cries, warriors fought the chilling slap of unavoidable death. Armor and water combined to forge an inexorable prison, luring men down with its deceptive embrace. Even in this horrendous momentum, boxes determined to outwit the ever-present threat. Their adaptability was tested repeatedly, yet each battle taught new lessons in survival against nature's most destructive force. In fire's aftermath stood charred vessels and floating wreckage, somber monuments to the battle's wage. Survivors returned with tales of infernos, their ships carrying scars like badges of survival. These stories of fire etched into memory served as cautionary lessons for those who dared the seas. Through these trials, the medieval world gleaned wisdom, understanding that fire in all its terrifying majesty was a teacher and a nemesis, lighting the way forward even as it threatened to consume what lay behind. In the dance between flame and water, humanity continues its timeless quest for mastery over elements that refuse to be tamed. In the tumult of a medieval naval battle, the notion of victory was as slippery as the decks themselves. The cacophony engulfed sailors, drowning the senses in an overwhelming blend of crashing waves, clashing swords, and shouts lost to the chaos. Communication became a distant memory, and the concept of a coordinated effort was little more than wishful thinking. Each participant found themselves isolated in the frenzy. The smoke from burning projectiles blurred vision, while the reek of sweat, blood, and salt water clung to every breath. It was less about steering the battle's outcome, and more about surviving each passing second. Any semblance of strategic coordination vanished into thin air amidst this maelstrom. Flags once proudly proclaiming allegiance quickly fell to the onslaught of arrows or disappeared entirely in the swirling smoke. Captains attempted to shout orders, but the roaring wind and crashing waves swallowed their voices whole. Unfathomable chaos reigned, leaving those embroiled in the melee to grapple with instinctual urges and the immediate threat of death over larger strategic goals. The battle was not a series of noble duels marked by honor. It was a frantic, disorganized contest where luck and primal tenacity often trumped skill. An unexpected twist, a foot slipping in blood, or an opponent's hesitation became the slender thread separating life from death. Combatants danced to the erratic drum beat of survival, driven less by leadership and more by the desperate imperative to endure. As these nautical contests raged on, hierarchy fell apart. Captains, leaders of men, and architects of fleets were swiftly reduced to participants in the chaos. They exchanged commanding authority for the immediacy of personal survival, becoming indistinguishable from the men they led. A once organized flotilla turned into isolated struggle zones, scattering across the sea like a flotilla of ghost ships, silent but for the mournful creaking of wood and pitching waves. Leadership lay as much in ruin as the battlefield itself, with captains and commandeers either fallen or consumed by the relentless tide of violence. There, amidst combat's debris-strewn wake, was lost any clear indication of triumph. The sea, indifferent and vast, bore witness to this silent chaos, its surface dotted by aimlessly drifting vessels. These ships, once harbingers of war and banners of power, now embody spectral remnants of resolved intentions and fractured dreams. For many involved in these grim conflicts, the water's harsh expanse echoed nature's timeless rule. Survival was uncertain, and the living were left to tally what remained. In this eerie tranquility, even the victors faced unsettling uncertainty. Ownership of conquered waters or strategic advantage dissolved into the sea's immensity swallowed by its serene indifference. Post-battle reckonings painted a chilling portrait of medieval naval warfare. Bodies rocked in the brine, ships drifted untended, and contemplation could not unravel the tangled web of loss. Survivors, exhausted and hollow-eyed, counted their dead against the backdrop of an unending horizon. Reflection revealed little favor. The stony gaze of the infinite sky mirrored the hollow exercise of these costly naval gambles, leaving those who lived to ponder the balance between ambition and futility. The ocean, present and eternal, was neither ally nor foe. It was the great equalizer, rendering human attempts to dominate it as significant as a whisper lost in the wind. Titles and victories meant nothing against the timeless expanse, and aspirations sank unnoticed beneath its deep currents. Yet the stories that emerged shaped legend and lore, woven by survivors into the fabric of history. True victory, elusive and ephemeral, lived in tales retold by firesides and captured within the leather-bound tomes of scholars. History immortalized the bravery and folly of ancient sailors, with the sea reclaiming names unsung by song or scroll. Waves carried whispered memories of uncelebrated heroism, anonymous, but felt in the seafaring spirit. In mathematical yet poetic precision, these battles etched themselves onto the human consciousness, chronicled not simply in bloodshed or territory, but in the stories that endured. Survivors, whether by fortune or fate, threaded their narratives into collective memory, sketching a tapestry of heroics against the backdrop of an impartial and eternal ocean. Legends and myths of these maritime conflicts continue to traverse time, echoing the universal tension between human ambition and nature's dominance. The sea maintained the memory of fleets and fleeting victories, while families and communities recounted tales of courage and vanity, each a fragment in humanity's endless dialogue with the sea. Each engagement became a tale of hope and tragedy, of valor enshrined within the ever-turning cycle of time and tide, a testament to dreams shaped and shattered upon the ocean slate. In the brutal chaos of medieval naval warfare, mobility could prove to be both a blessing and a curse. For those cast into the relentless embrace of the sea, their once trusted armor became a traitorous weight. Chain mail, helmets, and weaponry, which offered protection on deck, transformed into a sinking shroud in water. Like an ever-watchful predator, the sea exploited any weakness, dragging the wounded down into its depths. Struggling to stay afloat, soldiers found their own bodies betraying them, the energy they needed to survive slipping away with each desperate gasp of salt-laden air. In the water, there were no lines flung out for salvation, no rescuing hands to grasp, a somber reminder of the sea's indifference to human plight. Those unfortunate enough to find themselves in such dire straits knew the futility of hope. Breathing became a battle of its own as blood mingled with the briny sea, luring predators, both human and aquatic. Amidst the roar of waves and cries of battle, pleas for help were swallowed by the uncaring ocean. No hands reached out from above. Each man was locked in his own desperate dance with death. It was a lonely end marked by the chilling reality of the ocean's unyielding nature and the brutal demands of war. For those left above, the sight of helmets bobbing briefly before being swallowed by the sea was a haunting image. A soldier's helmet, a symbol of bravery and protection, became a silent testament to a final struggle. Briefly, these relics danced upon the surface, offering a fleeting farewell before vanishing beneath the waves. This grim ballet served as a sobering reminder that even the fiercest warriors were powerless against the sea's might. Observers felt a shiver at the silent fate of their comrades, a visceral acknowledgement of the ocean's dominance over human life. In the midst of pitched battles, the absence of medical aid was stark. There was no promise of succor for the mortally wounded amidst the swirling chaos. On land, knights expected their squires to tend to injuries after combat. But at sea, there was only the vicious reality of survival. The ship's deck, slippery with salt water and blood, became a testament to brutal injuries left untreated. Flesh tore, bones broke, yet sailors fought relentlessly without hope for healing. This brutal truth made clear the harshness of naval warfare. A warrior had to decide: tend to wounds or continue fighting, risking further harm. In this arena, the ultimate healers were time and fate, offering no guarantee of mercy. Battlefield injuries festered into infections, untreated traumas worsening with every roll of the ship, underscoring the grim cost of war to those who survived. Despite the ever-present dread, medieval naval conflicts carried an air of eerie pageantry. Occasionally, sea minstrels hovered at the fringes, their melodies a strange harmony in the midst of chaos. Charged with boosting morale, their melancholic tunes cut through the din, casting a haunting backdrop to the violence. Their music recorded battles through epic tales passed down generations, blending beauty with brutality in a surreal narrative of heroism and loss. As desperation set in, sailors turned to spirituality, seeking solace from a higher power. In their final moments, the crashing waves joined their cries, connecting them to distant altars of a life left behind. It was an urgent plea, a final hope amidst the futile struggle. This collective prayer echoed over the ocean, an ethereal testament to human fate in the face of despair. Amidst unfathomable odds, these invocations bridged the physical and the spiritual, a poignant acknowledgement of life's fragility against the vast ocean. Nature played its eternal role, reminding survivors of their transient existence. The aftermath of battles became a banquet for marine predators drawn by the scent of blood. Sharks and scavengers completed the cycle, transforming human tragedy into sustenance. The sea was a formidable adversary, its ecosystem a relentless reminder of mortality. This predatory interplay marinated Thales with tension, reaffirming the grim realities faced by medieval sailor storms were often seen as divine retribution, a betrayal that lent the sea an almost divine status, both life-giver and destroyer. Yet even storms had their perils in the form of rogue waves, those silent specters that appear without warning, rising like giants from the calm with no hint of a coming storm. These waves could swallow ships whole and leave no trace behind, their mystery fueling superstitions among sailors who saw them as omens or the wrath of the sea spirits. The challenge of navigating such waters demanded an intimate understanding of invisible forces. Mariners needed to be wily interpreters of tides and currents, lest their journeys end prematurely on hidden shores. Cross-currents, those silent ballet dancers of the sea, could unexpectedly twist a ship's course, pulling into uncharted dangers. They were viewed as inscrutable forces, sometimes even supernatural ones, guiding or punishing human attempts to tame the sea. Despite advances in understanding the ocean's patterns, navigational errors remained perilously common. Maps were rudimentary, dotted with inaccuracies, while navigation depended on visible stars or fickle winds, making voyages a nerve-wracking blend of vigilance and hope. A single star misread or the shift of a wind could render a journey a harrowing venture with dire consequences, casting crews away from their intended haven into the abyss of the ocean's appetite. This level of anxiety exacted a weighty toll on the minds of sailors. Stories of survival and shipwrecks, escapes and tragedies echoing in their collective lore. Diseases plagued ships exacerbated by cramped, unsanitary conditions. Scurvy, dysentery, and other malids feasted upon weakened bodies pushed to their limits by the ceaseless rocking and meager rations of sea life. Medical knowledge then was a mixture of superstition and the scant science available, leaving sailors with little hope, say, for endurance or surrender. As ships ventured farther afield, the very definition of navigable became fluid, with once safe waters becoming traps. With shifting tides and altered environments, ports, while safe in appearance, could harbor ambush or invite deadly rogue waves. Shipwrecks were among the gravest fears. The visceral sound of timber meeting rock, a knell of doom. Surviving a wreck meant a confrontation with alien shores, facing challenges that tested both spirit and body anew. The sea's benevolence, it seemed, could withdraw at a whim, demanding its toll in human lives as payment for its capricious passage. Yet despite these perils, or perhaps because of them, the struggle against the sea revealed the resilience and tenacity of humankind. Mariners pushed the limits of their knowledge, charting new territories and daring the ocean's vastness over centuries. This endeavor was an extraordinary feat, even as they knew the ultimate truth. No matter how skilled, the sea remained the unwavering victor. Its enigmatic ways reminded them that mastery was not about conquest, but coexistence with one of the Earth's most formidable forces. As this exploration of medieval naval warfare concludes, if this tale has gripped you like a tempest, as it has me, do show your support by liking and subscribing to this channel, as together we voyage through history's intriguing seas. Asterisk medieval sailors. Even as guests of the sea, sailors faced the merciless march of waves. An impersonal force, the ocean pummeled weary warriors. Each wave a cruel reminder of the sea's unyielding strength. Struggling against such might was futile. Sailors and ships alike became playthings in a relentless aquatic dance. This enduring rhythm erased memories of battles untold, twisting survivors in a timeless embrace with nature's raw power. Under stormy skies, ships appeared adrift on a vast consuming stage. Men became mere figures beneath lightning-veined clouds pitched by the sea's tempestuous fury. Personal battles played out against nature's grand symphony, an awe-inspiring spectacle that obliterated individual struggles in its wake. Yet it was within this chaos that the timeless stories of sailors emerged, shaped by the elemental forces around them. Through these legends, songs arose of forgotten heroes, sailors whose spirits became part of the ocean saga. They drifted as whispers in the wind, exhalations from village hearths and tavern fires. These tales etched their names into the annals of history, securing their place as mythic figures bound by the watery graves that claimed them. In their journey into legend, the echoes of bravery and sacrifice remain vivid reminders of the sea's unforgiving embrace. Music, after enduring the turmoil and violence of a medieval naval battle, emerging with one's life did not offer the solace one might imagine. The battle-worn survivors often found themselves aboard a vessel barely holding together with masts, cracked and sails torn to shreds. With hulls breached, these ships were nothing more than fragile wooden shells drifting across the sea. The specter of sinking loomed large as survivors frantically patched leaks with whatever materials they could scavenge. Canvas, tar, anything to keep the sea at bay. Amidst this chaos, the ship became a place of mourning, a floating tomb reverberating with the overwhelming silence of loss. Every groan of timbers and every echo of water against the deck brought memories of those who had perished, of comrades whose laughter would never again be heard. In the ensuing days, fear of potential enemy pursuers kept the surviving crew on edge, eyes perpetually scanning the horizon for the ominous silhouettes of approaching ships. A fragile camaraderie emerged, born from the shared trauma of battle and the mutual drive to get home. Yet lurking below decks, a more insidious enemy brewed. Disease thrived within the cramped, unsanitary quarters. A ruthless wave that swept across weakened bodies and unsuspecting minds. Scurvy, a silent killer birthed from the absence of fresh food, stealthily drained men of their vitality, turning stalwart sailors into shadows of their former selves. Gums bled, joints ached, and the men faced a foe they neither recognized nor knew how to combat. The ship creaked under the strain of this invisible menace, each grown a sinister reminder of mortality. without the faintest understanding of vitamin deficiency. Sailors resorted to superstitious remedies and fervent prayers, anything to stave off the invisible hands gripping their throats. Captivity too loomed large in their fates. Those unfortunate enough to fall into enemy hands confronted futures twisted by the harshness of medieval captivity. Enslavement often awaited them as they were auctioned and bartered, becoming currency. In a brutal economy, the prospect of ransom offered a glimmer of hope, but remained as uncertain as a ship's course in a storm. Negotiations for freedom were long, tense affairs entangled in the politics of the seas and tight purse strings back home. Letters crossed from captives to families, wrapped in promises that might never be fulfilled. Even when successful, the ransom didn't erase the scars or fill the void left by captivity's grim chapters. Those who returned were often marked men, their spirits warped by captivity. Back in their villages, they carried stories of dark despair interwoven with faint tales of hope, altering their communities' perceptions of maritime warfare. For some survivors, piracy emerged as a sinister yet pragmatic path faced with destitution and rejection from established norms. These former sailors embraced a life of piracy. Once soldiers of fortune under lawful banners, now they turned their gaze on merchant ships, wielding their intimate knowledge of the sea's chaotic ballet and the harsh hand of survival. The pirate life was malign and fraught with danger, but provided a means of self-reliance in a world that had cast them out. These sailors turned outlaws fashioned their own rules, answering to no flag but their own. Yet piracy came with ceaseless dangers. From the pounding pursuit by Navy ships to rival pirate skirmishes that were a daily reality on the high seas. Despite the constant threat of capture and execution, piracy offered a skewed semblance of freedom, born from necessity and nurtured by the relentless drive to survive. Even nature conspired against those who thought they'd slipped the grasp of enemy ships. Storms battered the seas with little compassion, and shipwrecks loomed as nightmarish echoes of battles fought. Vessels already weakened faced the relentless onslaught of nature's unforgiving hand. Waves towering high, winds howling like banshees across the stark expanse. Survivors who washed ashore encountered new adversities along foreign coasts, their lives teetering between peril and uncertainty. Roaming as refugees, they sought sustenance and shelter in lands that often viewed them with suspicion, forced to traverse a world where every unfamiliar gaze held potential threats. The legacy of survival extended beyond the physical, leaving indelible imprints on communities and individual psyches alike. Those who returned brought haunting stories of horror, mingled with odd fragments of heroism. Local tales turned these sailors into legends, or maybe warnings. Their lives beyond the sea echoing through villages with a mix of reverence and dread. Survival had carved them deeply, and their experiences shaped a poignant narrative of endurance. They stood as reminders that escaping the clutches of battle marked not an end, but an initiation into the enduring terror, quietly marching beside them long after the sea had reclaimed its dead. In the medieval era, the sea was an unpredictable and formidable force, respected and feared by all who sailed it. Mariners knew they were at the mercy of its whims, their fates intertwined with the shifting winds and erratic weather. Even the most seasoned sailors found themselves humbled by an unexpected storm or capricious change in weather. Medieval navigation relied on little more than the stars and occasional coastal sightings, both of which could be easily obscured by clouds and shadows, leaving them adrift with only hope and prayer as companions. The delicate tapestry of the sea's moods was a constant reminder of human frailty against its formidable power. Days that began serene could transform into scenes of chaos with torrential rain and raging winds, sending entire fleets into disarray. These abrupt changes served as vivid tales for sailors, stories woven with awe and dread that only added to the sea's mystique and majesty. A single miscalculation could lead to disaster, reinforcing the belief for medieval sailors that the sea was alive, a wild and capricious being. They knew that their ships, wondrous creations of their time, were still fragile in the face of nature's wrath. Craftsmanship was a kind of magic, holding these vessels together against the pounding waves with little beyond wood, rope, and the sailors' unyielding resolve. The waterlogged wood and salty air often dealt harsh blows to these ships, corroding metals and stressing their structures until they strained under duress. In the crucible of naval combat, the fragility of these ships became starkly evident. Surviving an enemy's assault was only half the battle. The sea itself could handle the rest. Ships groaning under their burden were unprepared for even small breaches that let the ocean drink them in slowly, eventually capsizing them. Repairs at sea were nearly impossible, each voyage balancing precariously on the edge of disaster. And amid this chaos, the sea's most feared soldiers remained the storms, demolishing our martyrs with a ferocity unmatched even by man-made weapons. The anticipation of impending doom was palpable in the air as dark clouds gathered, turning once calm waters into tumultuous arenas of fury, punctuated by the boom of thunder and flashes of lightning. In the storm's wake, a quiet desolation fell over the sea, leaving survivors clinging to debris amidst floating wreckage, a mute testament to the chaos that had unfolded. These